Let's begin with your parents, who had an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
And what did they think marriage should be, and what did it turn out to be for them?
Well, I think my parents had an arranged marriage, and I talked to my dad about what that was like, and he said, like, well, I was a certain age, I was ready to get married, and I went and met a couple of women, and then, decided on your mom. I was like, how many women did you meet? And he said, 2. And I was like, 2? That's it? And I was like, what was wrong with the first lady? And he was like, oh, she was a little bit too tall. And then he met my mom. She was a little bit shorter than him. He was like, let's do this. And they got married. And
What age were they?
my dad was like 31, and my mom was 25, I believe.
So that's later.
Yeah, it's a little bit later, yeah. But he's a doctor, and he was going through a lot of medical school and everything, so I think that's probably why he got married a little bit later. But anyway, they got married, and I think their marriage was kind of the best case version of arranged marriages. And arranged marriages that work, it kind of goes on this idea of like, oh, it starts at a simmer and it builds to a boil as the relationship progresses, And I'd say my parents are at a boil now. They have a great time together. They seem like really in love, and everything seems great. And now, for people that are trying to get married here, like you're trying to find like boiling water right away, and you have no interest in pursuing it unless it's like boiling from the get-go. And what's interesting, though, is like even outside of arranged marriages, when we talk to these older people in the retirement homes, it sounded very similar to arranged marriage in a way. They would meet someone that lived in their neighborhood. They would date him for like 6 months. They would marry him. They'd have kids.
Seemed good enough, right? It's like,
The idea was the good enough marriage is what people would call it, the good enough. And I think the difference is back then the idea of getting married was like, well, I got to find a decent person who I can start a family with, someone that'll be a good person to raise a family with, that's a good person. So, the family would meet the guy and be like, all right, he doesn't seem like he's gonna murder anybody. Get married to him. They get married, and it was your first step in adulthood. And when we talked to these women, it was so interesting. They're like, yeah, I was 20 years old, and I couldn't leave my house. I wasn't able to have like the basic freedoms of adulthood. I'd have to tell my mom wherever I was going, and the only way to get out was to get married and get on my own. And so we asked them, like, do you think you got married just so you could kind of just have those basic adult freedoms? And all of them were like, yeah. and now that's totally
now it's the end of freedom.
Yeah, now it's now you have this whole period where you're an adult, not living with your parents, where you're independent, and then at the end, you towards the later stage, you get married and start a family and everything.